I want to start this story by saying one thing. Christmas night shouldn't feel scary, but the one Christmas I was babysitting, it felt like something out of a nightmare. This happened in 2016 when I was 17. I lived in a quiet town in Wisconsin, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and waved to strangers. It was freezing that night, snowflakes falling slow. The world outside, soft and silent, like a painting. I was babysitting for a family named Vincent's. They had 2 kids, Emma, who was 6, and Noah, who was 4. Sweet kids, easy job, but they were going to a Christmas dinner with relatives, and I was supposed to watch the kids till around midnight. Nothing felt strange at first. The Christmas tree lights were glowing softly. A fire crackled in the fireplace. The house smelled like cinnamon. The kids were watching Elf while eating cookies. It was peaceful. It's peaceful, in hindsight. Around 9 p.m., the kids were asleep upstairs. I turned off the movie and walked around picking up crumbs. It's that warm, cozy feeling you get on Christmas night. Yeah, I had that until I heard the first sound. A soft crunch outside, like someone stepping on snow. I paused, listened. Nothing. Probably an animal, I told myself. I returned to the living room, sat on the couch, and pulled out my phone. Then came the second sound, this time louder. Another crunch. Slow. Deliberate. It was close. Right outside the window. I froze. The Vincent's living room window was big, floor to ceiling, facing the backyard, where a tall pine tree stood surrounded by untouched snow. I walked toward the window, but the blinds were half closed, leaving only thin gaps to peek through. I hesitated, and before I even looked, I felt someone was out there. You get this instinct sometimes, like your body knows before your brain catches up. Against my better judgment, I slowly parted 2 blinds with my fingers, and there he was, a man, standing directly outside. His face was pale, almost gray, under the dim outdoor Christmas lights. He wore a dark jacket, no hat, despite the cold. His hair was wet with snow, and it wasn't moving. Not even blinking, just standing there, staring at the house, staring at me. The air left my lungs in a shaky gasp. I dropped the blind instantly. My heart felt like it punched my ribs. I backed away from the window. What the hell? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a neighbor, someone lost, maybe someone drunk. But no, there was no reason anyone should be in the Vincent's fenced backyard. Grabbed my phone with trembling hands and called Mrs. Vincent. She answered cheerfully. Christmas music behind her. Everything okay? I lowered my voice. There's someone outside your window. She immediately took it seriously. What do you mean, someone? Come on. He's standing in your backyard. He's staring inside. There was a long pause. Then she said, okay, lock all doors. I'm calling the police. We're leaving now. Hung up and checked the front and back doors, even though they were already locked. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped the keys twice. The kids were upstairs, sleeping, completely unaware. I went to the living room again and peeked. He was closer, not up against the window, just a few feet away now, watching, still not moving. His face was wrong, expressionless, emotionless, like he wasn't fully there. It's like he wasn't even cold, despite the snow melting on his eyelashes. Please go, I whispered without meaning to. He tilted his head slightly, just a few degrees. Okay. But that tiny movement terrified me more than anything I'd ever seen. Shut the blinds again and backed away. Suddenly, I almost screamed. A loud slam hit the living room window. I ran upstairs. My only thought was the kids. I checked their room. It was still asleep, curled under their blankets, completely safe. I gently shut their door and stood in the hallway, heart beating so fast it hurt. Then I heard it slow, heavy, deliberate. Please be the police. Please be the police. I whispered, but no one knocked on the door. Instead, Soft, slow, tapping, tap, 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 dot, dot, tap, dot. This time from downstairs, near the kitchen. I held my breath. Then a voice, very faint, muffled, like someone speaking through glass. Let me in. I almost vomited from fear. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't dare. I stayed in the hallway with my back pressed to the wall. Tears were running down my face without me realizing it. Then, silence. Dead silence. For a moment, I thought maybe he left. But then, a door hinge. Inside. The house, my blood turned to ice. The back door, it wasn't fully latched. I must have not closed it hard enough earlier when checking. I heard the softest sound. Boot. Steps on the hardwood floor. Slow. Measured. Not rushing. Like he was listening. Trying to locate me. I covered my mouth with both hands to stifle my breathing. He moved deeper into the house. I could hear each creak, each uncanny pause. He wasn't wandering. He was checking rooms, hunting. He reached the bottom of the stairs. I could hear him exhale. A low, slow breath, like he was tired or excited. My vision blurred with tears. I held completely still. Then they weren't loud yet, but close. The footsteps stopped. Then turned, fast. I heard running. He sprinted to the back door. The sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights flashed through the blinds. I moved to the window, peeked carefully. The man was running across the backyard, straight into the tree line behind the house. A police car skidded into the driveway. Officers jumped out, yelling commands. "K." But he was fast and naturally fast for someone who had been standing still for hours. He disappeared into the woods. Just gone. The police swept the house and questioned me. Mr. and Mrs. Vincent showed up crying, thanking me for staying calm and protecting their kids. But here's the part that still bothers me. When police checked the snow around the house, they found footprints everywhere, but most of them, they weren't walking prints. They were standing prints. Deep, perfectly still impressions, meaning he had been outside the house long before I ever looked out the window, probably watching me from the moment I arrived. And it gets worse. A week later, police told the Vince something disturbing. There had been reports of a man peeping inside houses during the holidays, always on Christmas week, always targeting homes with young babysitters. They never caught him, never identified him, and he hasn't been seen since. But on some nights, especially around Christmas, when I'm alone, I swear I sometimes hear that slow tapping again. Tap, 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 and I always wonder what would have happened if the police hadn't arrived in time. What if he had reached the stairs? What if he had reached me? December nights in our town always felt heavier than the rest of the year, like the cold carried a weight that settled inside your bones. I was 18 that winter, working part-time at a small Christmas shop downtown. The job was simple: decorate shelves, restock ornaments, sweep floors, and most importantly, stay until closing. The shop had a warm charm string lights, cinnamon candles burning, soft Christmas music playing. But once the sun set, the cheer faded. The front windows turned into giant black mirrors, and the empty street outside felt watchful. For weeks, I kept noticing something strange, always on the outside of the glass, always facing inward. At first, I brushed it off kids pressing their hands on the window, maybe. But the prints weren't small. They were long, bony, uneven, and they weren't smudges from palm oil. They looked like streaks made by something cold, almost frozen. One evening, just a week before Christmas, my boss asked me to close alone. He tossed me the keys and told me not to forget to turn off the display lights. Normally, I didn't mind. But that night, for some reason, I felt uneasy. From the moment he left, by 9 p.m., I was sweeping near the front window when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. The sound came from the glass 3 slow, spaced-out knocks. I looked up, expecting to see someone standing there, but the street was empty. Snow was falling in lazy flakes. The warm yellow streetlight flickered, but nothing moved. I stepped closer, leaning in. My breath fogged the glass. Nothing. And then, right where my face had been, it's time, louder, closer, like a knuckle hitting directly opposite my forehead. My heart kicked hard in my chest. I whispered under my breath, "Hello?" Nothing answered, but right there, on the outside of the window, was a fresh handprint, and it hadn't been there 10 seconds earlier. The next night, I begged my boss to let me leave early. He laughed and said I needed to stop watching scary videos. So again, I closed alone at around 8:40 p.m. While turning off the decorative wreath lights, I noticed something in the reflection of the window. Not outside in the reflection. Behind me, near the tall shelf of snow globes, a figure. Tall, thin, still. I spun around so fast, I nearly slipped. The shelf was empty. Thing was there. When I turned back toward the window, the reflection was still showing the figure, unmoving, standing right behind me. I stumbled backward, away from the glass. My breath caught in my throat as I finally forced myself to look directly behind me. Again, nothing, absolutely nothing. But when I looked back to the window, the handprint appeared again, fresh, pressed hard, long fingers splayed wide, as if it was touching the glass from the other side. I locked the door 2 minutes later and practically ran home. By the third night, I was legitimately scared. I kept telling myself it was pranks, tricks of light, stress, anything logical. The store was nearly silent that evening. Even the music seemed muted. I worked quickly, organizing Christmas cards into neat stacks, while placing the last box back on the shelf. A soft whisper drifted across the aisle. "Are you alone?" Every hair on my arms stood straight. I paused, listened, held my breath. Nothing. I slowly leaned around the corner of the aisle. Empty. When I turned back to the shelf, one of the greeting cards had shifted. The front of the card, handwritten in sloppy black ink, now read, "I see you." Hadn't written that. No one else was in the store. I backed away, heart hammering, when something else caught my eye. The front window fogged over, like someone was breathing on it from outside, and right in the center of the fog, a long, slow finger dragged downward, leaving a trail. Then another finger joined, then another, until a whole hand pressed flat against the glass. Snowstorm warnings were announced the next evening, but my boss still made me come in. He said customers would need decorations and emergency gift bags. By 7 p.m., the snow had become a white blur outside. But even through the thick snowfall, I saw something that froze me in place, a shape across the street. Tall, white, still at first. I thought it was a snowman someone built. But why would a snowman be built on the sidewalk, directly facing our store, at night, during a storm? And why was it so tall? 7 feet, maybe more. I kept glancing at it while closing the store. At one point, the street light flickered, and I swear, the head had tilted, just a little, as if listening, or watching. I shut the blinds. Immediately, this was the night everything snapped. At 8:12 p.m., while restocking candy canes, the front door's motion sensor chimed. My heart dropped. No one should have been entering. The door was locked. I slowly walked toward the front. The store was empty, but the door was open, just an inch. It's just enough for Wanda and something else to slip inside. My shaking hand pushed it shut, locked it again, double-checked it. I tried to steady my breathing, but then I heard footsteps, soft, slow, inside the store. Somewhere between the aisles, I whispered, "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. The lights flickered. A shape slid into view from behind. The gift trapping. Al, not walking, gliding, tall, lanky, wrapped in what looked like strips of pale cloth, like old winter clothes, stretched too tight. Its head twitched to one side, then the other, as if curious, as if smelling the air. I stepped back. The figure stepped forward, silent, closer and closer, till I could finally make out his face. It's just smooth, white skin, too pale for a human, almost frostbitten. It lifted a long finger and pointed toward the front window. Then it spoke in a dry, cracking whisper. "Come outside. It's Christmas." I stumbled backward, knocking over a display of snow globes. Glass shattered around my shoes, but the thing didn't flinch. It simply stood there, pointing toward the window as if insisting I follow. The store suddenly felt too small, too quiet. The air itself felt cold or heavy, like it belonged outside in a snowstorm instead of inside a heated shop. I whispered, barely able to speak, "What are you?" The figure's head twitched, slowly, sharply, like a puppet whose strings were being jerked. Then it took a step toward its foot, barely making any sound on the tile floor. I turned and ran, not toward the door, but toward the back storage room. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and pressed my back against it. My lungs felt tight, and every breath came out in a shaky gasp. The lights in the storage room flickered, then went out completely. Only the red exit sign glowed above me, outside the door. Something scraped along the floor. A long, slow drag, like fingernails or icicles being pulled across tile. Then, right against the storage door, once, loud, my whole body jerked. I grabbed my phone and dialed my boss. He didn't pick up. I dialed again. Still nothing. Another knock hit the door, this time higher, then another, lower, as if the thing was filling around. Searching for a weakness, my hands shook violently as I whispered into the darkness, "Please, go away." For a moment, everything went silent. Then I heard it breathing. Not normal breathing, but a slow, icy inhale, like someone sucking winter air through broken lungs. The door handle twitched. My heart nearly exploded. Then came a whisper, right on the other side of the door, "Let me in." I didn't think, I just moved. I turned and ran toward the emergency exit at the back of the storage room, led into the alley behind the shop. Snow was piling high outside, but it didn't matter. Slammed my shoulder into the bar and burst out into the storm. The freezing air hit me like a slap. Snow whipped across my face as I stumbled into the alley. The entire street was dead silent. No cars, no people, no sound except the wind. I pulled the door shut behind me, but didn't dare lock it. I feared making too much noise. Instead, I backed away from the building and looked up toward the shop's front windows. That's when I saw movement. Something tall was standing inside. A pale shape, its face pressed against the glass. Watching me, the snowstorm distorted everything. But I saw its long, white hand trace a slow circle on the inside of the window, like it was marking the place where it expected me to return. The lights behind it flickered. Its head tilted, lifted its other hand, and waved, not a cheerful wave, but slow, mocking, inviting. I turned and ran down the alley, slipping on the ice. I didn't look back until I reached the main road, except the main road was barely visible under the snow. That's when I heard the first sound from behind me, like a door breaking. Then, footsteps slow, crunching in the snow. Getting closer, I sprinted toward the nearest streetlight. Its warm yellow glow seemed like the only safe place in the entire world. A boot cut deep prints in the fresh snow, and my breath pumped out in frantic clouds. I stood beneath the flickering light, grabbing the metal pole like it could somehow protect me. The snowstorm swirled around me, blurring everything beyond a few feet. But through the white haze, a shape appeared. Tall, slender, wrong. It moved with unnatural slowness, as if it were gliding instead of walking. The storm seemed to part around it, the snow refusing to touch its body. I tried calling someone, anyone, and my phone, but my fingers were shaking too much. I couldn't unlock the screen. The figure stopped at the edge of the light, right outside the glow, as if the light itself was a barrier. It stood still for a long time, snow swirling around its outline. Then its head lowered, lowly, like it was studying the invisible border between us. The whisper came again, carried on the wind. "Come back inside." My chest tightened. Tears lifted in my eyes, shook my head violently. The figure twitched, jerked. Its entire body convulsed once, like it was fighting something. Then it lifted one long arm and pointed behind me. I froze. Terror sank deep into my stomach. Slowly, I turned my head. A windowed bus stop stood a few feet away. Sighted. In the reflection of the glass, I saw the figure, standing right behind me. Even though I knew it was impossible, it had not moved. It was still at the edge of the streetlight, yet its reflection was inches from my neck. I screamed, and for the first time, the reflection moved on its own. It raised its hand, placed it on my shoulder. I felt cold fingers brush my jacket, even though nothing was touching me in reality. I stumbled forward into the snow, sobbing. The reflection stayed behind in the glass, its pale smile widening into something stretched and unnatural. The figure at the edge of the streetlight stepped backward into the storm and disappeared. The reflection in the bus stop glass watched me silently. Then it whispered, so close I felt a breath on my ear, "See you tomorrow." I ran. I don't even remember which direction I went. All I know is that I kept my eyes away from anything reflective: car windows, store glass, the metal of street signs, because I was terrified I'd see that reflection again. The wind bit into my face. My legs felt numb. But I didn't stop until I finally reached my apartment building. It was an older place, a tall beige structure with rusty balconies and a lobby light that always flickered. Normally, seeing it brought some comfort. That night, it felt like I was running into a shelter that could collapse at any minute. I yanked open the lobby door and stumbled inside. The heater hummed loudly. The fake Christmas tree in the corner flickered with cheap blue lights. Everything felt normal, too. Normal. I locked the door behind me. For the first time since the mall, I exhaled deeply. My heart slowed. My breathing steadied. Safe, I whispered to myself. Though I didn't believe it. The elevator was old and loud, so I took the stairs. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. By the time I reached my hallway, my legs were shaking with exhaustion. More than fear, I unlocked my door, stepped inside, quickly locked it behind me. Then I froze. My apartment was warm, quiet, still, but the window blinds facing the parking lot were open. I never left them open, ever. A cold shiver slid down my back. I forced myself to approach the window slowly. My heart was pounding so loudly I felt it in my teeth. Outside, the snowstorm had slowed. The parking lot lights glowed a soft yellow against the white drifts, and in the far corner of the lot, next to the dumpster, stood the same tall figure, white, still, facing my window. It didn't move. It didn't wave. It just stared. "I'm hallucinating," I whispered. I'm tired. That's all." But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. I didn't know if I should call the police or a friend or my boss. I thought about calling my parents, but I'd only scare them. I decided to call building security. Before I could dial inside my apartment, it was getting colder. I looked around, panicking. The heater was on. My thermostat read 73 degrees Fahrenheit, yet my breath still fogged the air. And then, tap, tap, tap. It was coming from behind me. From the window, I turned. The blinds were still open. The figure outside was gone, but something else was there. A shape pressed against the outside of the glass. A pale hand, long fingers. Too long. They glided slowly down the length of the window, leaving streaks of frost behind. I screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over my lamp. It shattered on the floor. The hand stayed there, pressed against the glass, even though my apartment was on the 3rd floor. How are you up here?" I whispered, unable to breathe. The fingers curled, scratched lightly, SKRRT, skirt, skrit. Then the hand withdrew, disappeared from view. I rushed forward and yanked the blinds shut, then dragged my dresser across the room to block the window. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip anything. The cold grew deeper, seeping through every corner of the room. When I exhaled, it looked like I was outside in winter. I pulled out my phone, desperate, and dialed my boss one more time. This time, he answered. "Hello, Ryan? Why the hell are you calling me at 4 in the morning?" I burst into tears. "There's something following me," I choked out. "From work, I saw something in the store. It followed me home. It's outside my window." He cut me off. "What? Slow down, Ryan. What are you talking about?" I told him everything, right from the moment I saw the figure through the Christmas display window. I expected him to laugh or call me crazy, but he did. In fact, his voice went quiet, uneasy. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "You saw him too, didn't you?" My throat closed. "What do you mean too?" My boss sighed a long, shaky breath. "Every Christmas," he whispered, "someone reports a figure in the display room. It only shows up late at night, after hours, when the lights dim. What is it? We don't know. People quit. They say it follows them home, watches them, shows up in reflections." My heart dropped into my stomach. He continued, voice trembling. "2 employees moved out of state after seeing it. One never came back to work at all. Said it whispered to them." I couldn't breathe. "What do I do?" I whispered. My boss hesitated, then said quietly, "Don't look out any windows tonight. Don't answer if you hear knocking. By morning, it should leave." "Should leave," I repeated, voice cracking. But he didn't answer. The call ended abruptly. I sat in my room, shaking violently, staring at the blocked window. The cold in my apartment slowly began to fade. But my fear, and single quotes. Then, at exactly 4:32 a.m. in the window, soft, polite, as if asking to be let in, I covered my ears, curled into a ball on the floor. Its tears burned my eyes, and knocked again, a little louder, and then a whisper seeped through the glass, muffled but unmistakable. "We're not done." I didn't sleep. I didn't move. The knocking continued, softly, rhythmically, until dawn's first light touched the edges of my blinds. And then silence. When sunlight filled the room, the normal warmth returned. When I finally found the courage to move the dresser and lift the blinds, there was nothing outside, just the parking lot covered in fresh snow, except right below my window. Pressed deeply into the snow were footprints, but not human footprints. Long, thin, almost like someone walking on the tips of their toes, with toes far longer than normal. The tracks led toward the trees behind the building and disappeared into the woods. I quit my job that afternoon, and every Christmas since, even years later, I make sure the blinds in my home stay closed at night, because sometimes, when the snow falls heavy, I swear I still hear that gentle, polite knocking. I still don't know who or what left that Christmas tree on my porch, or how it kept moving closer to my door every night. I grew up in a small mountain town where winters were long and quiet. It's a kind of place where everyone knew each other, and neighbors exchanged cookies or homemade ornaments during Christmas. But 6 years ago, something happened during Christmas week that still keeps me up at night. It began with a small Christmas tree, a real one, freshly cut, tied with twine, propped up neatly on my front porch. The problem was, I didn't order it, and no one in my family had left it. It just appeared. It was December 20th, Heavy snow had blanketed the forest around my house. I lived alone back then, in a cabin just outside the main town, close enough for a short drive. Far enough that the nights were pitch black and silent. I had just finished work and pulled into my driveway. My headlights swept across the porch, and that's when I saw it. A small pine tree, maybe 4 feet tall, leaning against the wooden railing. A little pile of snow at its base. No lights, no ornaments, just a plain tree. Okay, weird. Muttered, stepping out of my truck. The air was cold enough to hurt my lungs. My boots crunched loudly on the snow as I approached. I looked around. The entire street was empty. No footprints in the snow except mine. I checked under the tree for a note, a tag. Anything, nothing. I shrugged and dragged it off the porch, leaning it against the shed near the side of the house. I figured maybe someone dropped it off at the wrong house, and that was it. I didn't think much of it. Not yet. The next evening, around 9:30 p.m., something made my heart drop. I opened the front door to take out the trash, and the exact same tree was back on my porch. Same height, same twine, same broken branch on one side. It was the same tree. What the hell? I whispered, scanning the yard. My porch light flickered in the cold. Beyond that, pure darkness. The forest behind my house was a solid black wall. The snow around the porch was untouched. Still no footprints, no drag marks, nothing. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe a neighbor's kid was playing a prank. Maybe the wind rolled it. No, trees don't roll, and there was no wind strong enough to push it uphill. So I shoved it off the porch again, this time tossing it deeper into the trees near the shed. I watched it land, branches snapping lightly. Stay there, I muttered like an idiot. I went inside, locked every door. I told myself I was overreacting, but when I went to bed, I couldn't shake this heavy feeling like someone had stood on my porch, watching the house, waiting for me to come outside. I got home late from a Christmas dinner with coworkers. The night was freezing, colder than usual. It was almost 1 a.m. when I pulled up. All I wanted was to get inside and sleep, but the headlights caught something on my porch again. I turned the truck off, sat there for a moment. My throat went dry. The tree was back, but this time, it wasn't empty. There was something hanging from one of the branches. I stepped out of the truck slowly, each breath fog in the air. My porch light flickered again brighter, then dimmer like it was struggling. As I got closer, I realized it was a photograph clipped to the branch with a small wooden clothespin. I felt cold from the inside out when I saw what was in the photo. It was a picture of my cabin, taken from the forest, taken at night, taken while my living room light was taken while I was inside. I looked around desperately into the tree line, past the driveway, behind the shed. No footprints, no movement, but I felt watched, deeply watched. I grabbed the photo with shaking hands and rushed inside, slamming the door and locking it. Inside the warm cabin, the photo felt wrong in my hands. The perspective was unsettling. It was taken from far back, like someone standing between trees. My silhouette was faintly visible through the living room window. I checked the timestamp printed on the corner, 12:47 a.m. It was only 10 minutes earlier. Someone had been there, watching me, hiding in the trees, right before I came home. I didn't sleep at all that night. By December 23rd, I was exhausted. My eyes felt bruised from lack of sleep. But worse than the tiredness was the dread of going outside again. I almost didn't leave the house that day, but I had to drive to town for groceries before everything closed for the holiday. When I returned, the tree was there again, but now it had something new. It's an ornament, a single red ornament hanging from a low branch. It wasn't shiny or pretty. It was old, dusty, cracked. I didn't want to touch it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside the ornament was a tuft of hair, Dark hair, short strands, messy and tangled. My legs weakened, my vision blurred at the edges. That's when I heard it. From the tree line, a voice, soft, broken, too close. You didn't decorate it. I froze, every muscle locked. That voice didn't sound normal, dry, like someone whose throat hadn't tasted water in days. I couldn't pinpoint where it came from, but it was close. Too close. Somewhere in the darkness of those woods, I backed toward my front door, slowly, keeping my eyes on the tree, on the yard, on the woods, but the voice came. Again, slightly louder. Come, trim the tree. I ran. I don't think I've ever moved so fast in my life. I burst through my door, locked it, deadbolted it, and then dragged a small bookshelf in front of it. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I pressed my back against the wall and listened. Silence. Then, dash, thump, against the porch. Then, another thump. Thump, like something heavy was being dragged. The tree. I peeked through the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. The tree, now leaning upright, was right against my front door. Branches pressed into the wood. The red ornament dangling inches from the PEEPHOLE dot, and behind the tree, just barely visible, was a figure, tall, still, hidden behind the trunk. Waiting, I backed away from the door, my heartbeat drowning out every sound. I turned off all the lights, sat on the floor, and waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The thumping stopped. Everything went silent. I stayed awake until dawn. I should have left, checked into a motel, called the police again. But I kept thinking, if I leave, will whatever's out there follow me? That night, snow fell heavier than before. The forest was completely hidden behind a white curtain by midnight. Cabin was silent except for the soft hum of the heater. I was sitting in the living room, exhausted, staring at the fireplace when I heard creak, the sound of wood bending. I turned my head slowly toward the window facing the porch. The blinds were closed, but the outline behind them, the silhouette, was unmistakable. A tall shape pressed against the glass, motionless. I reached for my phone, dialed 911 with trembling hands. The dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone on my porch, I whispered. They've been stalking me, leaving things, watching me. They're right outside my window. What's your address? KK. Stay on the line, sir. A unit is on the way. I wasn't listening anymore because I heard the whisper again, this time through the wall. Let me in. My blood ran cold. The silhouette pressed closer. The glass groaned. The window frame creaked. Let me in. Then crack. The window pane fractured. Then spiderweb cracks splintering across the glass. I screamed and ran into the bathroom, locking the door and turning off the light. Minutes dragged on like hours. I heard snow crunching, steps around the house, slow, deliberate steps. Then nothing. By the time the police arrived, the porch was empty. The tree was gone. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. No ornament, no figure, like it had never been there at all. I spent Christmas at my sister's house in the city. When I came back 2 days later to pack some bags, there was one thing waiting for me, propped against my front door. It was the same little Christmas tree, only now had a new ornament, a small photo. It's a picture taken through my bathroom window, taken on Christmas Eve, taken while I was hiding inside, taken from only a few inches away. The window had a faint handprint. On it, long fingers, spread wide, pressed against the glass. I moved out that same day, and I haven't spent a Christmas alone since. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.